The northern frontier of the Aztec Empire was a harsh, untamed zone. Unlike the fertile valleys of central Mexico, the land stretched into arid plains, rugged mountains, and desert scrublands. Water was scarce. Agriculture was difficult. For the Aztecs, who built their power on tribute and food surpluses, this region posed a unique challenge. They could not simply settle it as they did in the Valley of Mexico. The frontier was home to diverse peoples collectively referred to by the Aztecs as Chichimecas, a term they used broadly for nomadic or semi-nomadic tribes. These included the Guachichiles, Zacatecos, Pames, and Otomi in the northern highlands. Unlike the dense city-states to the south, these groups lived in small, mobile communities. They hunted game, gathered wild plants, and raised few crops. Their survival depended on mobility and knowledge of the land. For the Aztecs, the northern frontier was not just a border, but a zone of uncertainty. Resisted tribes, Aztec expansion. Raids were frequent. Small settlements often fortified themselves with walls or natural defenses. Spanish chroniclers noted that the Aztecs referred to these areas as wild and dangerous. The frontier demanded constant vigilance and strategic planning from the empire's leaders. Despite the difficulties, the frontier had value. It was a source of warriors, raw materials, and trade opportunities. Obsidian, salt, and specialized goods came from these regions. Aztec traders moved cautiously, offering gifts and tribute in exchange for loyalty. Yet the northern peoples rarely submitted fully. Their independence shaped Aztec military, economic, and political strategies. Life on the frontier required adaptation. The Aztecs stationed military garrisons in key locations. They built roads, known as Camino Reales, to maintain communication. Settlers were encouraged to create small towns, but these were often vulnerable to raids. The environment shaped both the Aztec response and the character of the northern tribes. It was a land where survival depended on knowledge, courage, and constant negotiation. The northern frontier was a place of contrasts. Fertile valleys in the south produced maize and beans. Here, survival meant relying on the land's sparse offerings. Yet this harshness bred resilience. The Aztecs respected the military skill of these nomads, acknowledging their ability to strike quickly and vanish. For the empire, understanding the frontier was not optional, it was necessary for security, trade, and expansion. Chroniclers described border towns as tense spaces. Life there was disciplined. Military campaigns were prepared with precision. Citizens were trained to respond to sudden attacks. For many Aztecs, the frontier was an adventure, a place of danger and opportunity. For the northern peoples, it was their home, carefully defended and fiercely independent. In the broader context, the frontier reflected a central theme of the Aztec Empire: control versus autonomy. Central Mexico was organized, tributary, and predictable. The northern frontier was unpredictable, resistant, and challenging. It forced the empire to rethink strategies and adapt to environments that could not be easily tamed. This tension between power and resistance defined the northern edge of the Aztec world.
It was a living, contested space. Its peoples influenced Aztec policies, military planning, and cultural exchange. Understanding it provides insight into the limits of imperial control and the resilience of communities who refused submission. The story of the northern frontier is the story of survival, adaptation, and negotiation at the edge of one of history's most remarkable empires. Conflict defined the northern frontier. The Aztecs encountered resistance not in a single, decisive battle, but through decades of skirmishes, raids, and shifting alliances. The northern tribes were expert in guerrilla tactics. They used their knowledge of deserts, mountains, and scrublands to outmaneuver the more organized Aztec forces. early encounters often began with trade or diplomacy. The Aztecs offered gifts, demanded tribute, or sought military alliances. Some tribes accepted tokens of loyalty, but retained their autonomy. Others refused entirely. Spanish accounts noted that the Aztecs described these groups as wild men for their refusal to settle or pay tribute, yet they admired their courage and resourcefulness. The first military campaigns were limited in scope. Aztec armies marched north with the goal of securing trade routes and establishing garrisons. Battles were sudden, often erupting along passes and river valleys. The nomads' mobility allowed them to evade capture. They raided supply lines, destroyed crops, and struck settlements. For the Aztecs, these were costly campaigns. Success was temporary. Domination was elusive. Aztec generals like Tlacaelel emphasized preparation, intelligence gathering, and disciplined response. Among the northern tribes, leaders organized warriors into mobile units capable of rapid strikes. These leaders were remembered for their cunning and bravery. Their names survive in codicecs and chroniclers' writings, though often overshadowed by southern accounts. The frontier demanded adaptation. The Aztecs developed fortified outposts and constructed watchtowers to monitor movements. They trained local militias and organized seasonal campaigns. At the same time, some northern tribes began negotiating partial alliances, providing warriors to Aztec armies in exchange for protection or trade. This fragile cooperation was punctuated by sudden violence, as alliances were never fully trusted. The conflicts produced cultural consequences. Northern tactics influenced Aztec military strategy. Aztec soldiers learned to fight in unfamiliar terrain. Diplomacy became as important as combat. Trade networks adjusted to accommodate both risk and opportunity. The northern peoples maintained autonomy while contributing indirectly to the empire's economy and military. These early conflicts highlighted a central controversy. Could the Aztecs truly claim authority over the northern frontier? Chroniclers reported victories, but these were often symbolic. The northern tribes were never fully incorporated. Their resistance forced the empire to balance expansionist ambitions with practical limitations. The frontier remained contested, a zone of negotiation, conflict, and uneasy coexistence.
In essence, the northern frontier was a proving ground. Success required careful planning, intelligence, and diplomacy. Failures were reminders of limits. The Aztecs learned that conquest here was not absolute. The northern tribes proved that resilience and local knowledge could challenge even a sophisticated empire. By the late 15th century, the Aztec Empire intensified efforts to secure the northern frontier. Tributes, trade, and political influence required more permanent control. Military campaigns became more ambitious. Entire armies marched into hostile terrain, facing guerrilla resistance, harsh climates, and supply shortages. Aztec strategy focused on establishing garrisons along key routes. Towns such as Tula and other frontier outposts became staging grounds. Soldiers built fortifications, monitored passes, and trained local auxiliaries. These measures sought to stabilize the frontier and protect trade, but they were costly. Resources had to be diverted from the empire's heartlands. Resistance from northern tribes was organized and persistent. Groups like the Huachichiles and Zacatecos attacked in coordinated raids. They avoided open battle when possible, but struck decisively against supply lines and settlements. Spanish accounts describe these raids as terrifying for the Aztecs. The tribe's intimate knowledge of terrain made them formidable opponents. Leaders on both sides were decisive. Aztec commanders imposed strict discipline and leveraged alliances with semi-submissive groups. Northern chiefs rallied warriors by appealing to the defense of land and independence. Battles were not only physical,
but symbolic. The survival of communities and the authority of the empire were at stake. The campaigns had consequences beyond warfare. Villages were destroyed, crops burned, and populations displaced. Yet northern tribes often rebuild quickly, moving to less accessible areas. The Aztecs learned that permanent conquest would be difficult. Control became partial. Tribute was collected from cooperative groups, while others remained independent. This period also shaped cultural exchange. Northern warriors occasionally joined Aztec armies as mercenaries. The Aztecs adopted some northern tactics, such as rapid raids and ambush strategies. Northern goods, particularly salt, hides, and feathers, became integrated into Aztec markets. Conflict coexisted with trade and cultural exchange, creating a complex frontier dynamic. Ultimately, the push north demonstrated limits of Aztec power. The empire could project force, but could not fully dominate the region. The northern frontier remained a zone of negotiation, violence, and adaptation. The Aztecs learned to respect the independence and skill of northern peoples. Their campaigns revealed both ambition and constraint, highlighting the challenges of life on the edge of empire. While conflict dominated the narrative, the northern frontier was also a zone of interaction. Trade and alliances were essential. Tribes who accepted partial submission provided goods and warriors. Aztec merchants traveled carefully, negotiating exchange rather than relying solely on conquest. Salt, feathers, animal hides, and obsidian were major trade items. Northern peoples supplied resources that were scarce in central Mexico. The Aztecs in turn offered cloth, cacao, and crafted goods. This trade strengthened relations where direct control was impossible. Agreements were fragile but valuable.
Marriage alliances and tribute arrangements were sometimes used to stabilize the frontier. A tribe might supply warriors to an Aztec campaign in return for protection. Religious festivals occasionally became points of diplomacy, allowing Aztec officials to assert authority without full conquest. These strategies reflected the empire's adaptability. Cultural exchange occurred subtly. Northern tactics influenced Aztec military training. Knowledge of the environment improved logistics. Northern artisans introduced skills and designs to Aztec markets. The frontier became a zone where survival, cooperation, and cultural blending intersected. Yet these alliances were unstable. Raids persisted. Trust was limited. The Aztecs understood that control required both force and negotiation. The frontier was not fully pacified, but remained a vital zone for economic, military, and social interaction. Its complexity defied simple narratives of empire and conquest. This balance of conflict and cooperation highlights the northern frontier as a space of tension and opportunity. It shaped Aztec strategies, economy, and worldview. Life on the edge of the empire was never secure, yet it offered lessons in adaptation, diplomacy, and resilience. The frontier was a proving ground for both the Aztecs and northern peoples. By the early 16th century, the northern frontier remained only partially integrated into the Aztec Empire. Its peoples retained independence. Tributes and trade were intermittent. Military garrisons controlled key points but could not dominate the landscape entirely. The frontier demonstrated the limits of imperial reach. For the Aztecs, the northern frontier had consequences. Resources devoted to defense could not be used elsewhere. Continuous campaigns strained the military and the treasury. Political focus on central Mexico sometimes overshadowed frontier issues, leaving gaps in control. Yet the frontier also provided lessons. Adaptability, diplomacy, and appreciation of diverse cultures became central to imperial administration. The northern peoples emerged resilient. They maintained autonomy, defended territory, and preserved cultural identity.
Spanish chroniclers later noted that these tribes were difficult to conquer even after the fall of the Aztecs. Their resistance shaped perceptions of northern Mexico for centuries. The frontier also left an enduring legacy in Aztec history. Military tactics, trade practices, and political strategies were influenced by northern experiences. Leaders understood that empire depended not only on conquest, but on negotiation and adaptation. Life on the edge of the empire taught restraint, planning, and respect for diverse societies. In conclusion, the northern frontier was a place of tension, challenge, and resilience. It was a contested zone where the Aztec Empire met limits. The story of the frontier reveals the interplay of power, survival, and adaptation. It highlights the human capacity to resist domination and to survive in harsh environments. The northern frontier was not a failure, but a space of learning, courage, and negotiation at the edge of an empire.